if I wasn't working in a gun store and I wasn't in this industry as a hobby the way that I am now, my AR would probably look just like this. Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you about a firearm that is very affordable that I think brings a lot to the table. There's some modifications on this. This gun is a near clone of the original AR-15 that I first purchased and built back in around 2013. Now, the inspiration behind this was I had a simple gun back then, and I was balling on a budget. I was working with about 800 bucks a month to cover all my expenses, and I scrimped and saved over an 8-month period of time, possibly even longer than that, to put together a good gun. And through my time as a YouTuber, I have developed a very severe case of restless AR syndrome. And so what I wanted to do was recreate that initial AR-15 in spirit, but what would it have looked like if I had kept that gun and just slightly modified it here and there over time? Now, what this is also going to serve to you as a demonstration or just a, maybe an idea starter for you would be if you're interested in getting an AR-15, but you want something simple, you want something affordable. Pretty much everyone can afford this gun. The most expensive thing is the optic. But again, this is the original optic off the original AR that I owned. So we're going to talk about some things. We're going to be going ass to mouth because Grantham goes tip to butt. He's got that coined. So before we get into it, though, I do want to say thank you to everyone that supports me. I want to say thank you to Barbell Apparel. They are the clothing that I wear in a lot of my videos. The only jeans I wear anymore. Great pants, great shirts, a lot of stuff. If you use the link in the description, that helps me. Thank you to Gorilla Mind. Links in the description, 10% off any supplements, pre-workout, all that jazz. And then in addition to that, if you check out Route 66 Shooting Sports Park down in San Bernardino, California, if you're in that area, check them out. It is definitely worth it, in my opinion. So let's talk about this firearm here. I'm going to bring the camera in and top-down view, and we'll just talk about some of the parts. So I'm going to flip this over. Now, starting at the rear, we have a B5 Systems buttstock. You can get a fairly more affordable one through a website called AR-15 Discounts, their Dirty Bird line, but this is a pretty standard buttstock. This one's been made fixed into one position due to California, but it's got a good rubber butt pad, good cheek weld. There's better options on the market, but this is a pretty good entry-level baseline upgrade to your original stock. When I first got this gun, or when I first built the gun that inspired this build, it had a standard mil-spec carbine buttstock, and I imagine that if I had kept that one AR, which was my intentions prior to getting into YouTube, I had very few firearms because I didn't need them, and I still don't, but now I get to enjoy a lot of things. So if I was going to upgrade that stock, this would be a very sensible solution. It's affordable, it's easy to get a hold of, it's pretty good, it's a nice little additional performance boost in terms of the ergonomics and consistency that you get. QD sling points, which is nice. The grip here, now I am in the state of California, which means that we have to do some things to our grips and whatnot, because this gun is a featureless firearm, which means it does not have any of the evil features, which means I could use normal detachable magazines. This is the B5 Systems featureless fin grip. It's one of my favorites. It's a very new one to the market. Not a whole lot of people have been talking about this, but in my opinion, it looks the least hideous, least ugly, and it does the job pretty well. Got some good grip texture. I find that I can grab the gun just fine. Now, when you use a featureless style firearm in the state of California, if you're a right-hand shooter, you're going to need an ambi safety. If you're a left-hand shooter, you can get away with just the standard sighted safety, but I do recommend, as a right-hand shooter with a featureless gun, go ahead and get yourself an ambi safety. This was more of a mil-spec style one. Nothing fancy. The lower receiver is an Anderson. Now, I believe the original lower that I had was an Arrow Gen 1, but I couldn't get any photos. I couldn't find any photos, but I know that I got that on a good deal, so I was just keeping that in mind and going with something inexpensive, because the lower would stay the same, the upper would mostly stay the same. It would be the little parts that add to it that I think I would change if I were to keep that original gun. The trigger, this is just a polished mil-spec trigger. It pulls at the same standard weight, but it reduces the amount of grittiness and take-up just by being a much smoother action. It breaks pretty consistently. I've never had this gun not go bang, never had a light strike, no problems with it whatsoever. You can get these from a variety of different manufacturers. I'm not real picky. If it's a polished nickel, Teflon, nickel boron, whatever, mil-spec trigger, these do just fine. And it's a nice little upgrade, very affordable, very reasonable, very practical. The charging handle at the rear is the Geisley Maritime, I believe. I don't know. It's a Geisley ambi charging handle. This is just what I had laying around. But if I were to be more balling on a budget, I might consider something like the Radian Raptor LT, which is a little bit cheaper. But ambi charging handles are nice. They're definitely not necessary, but again, if I was taking a base gun and putting a little bit into it over time, this would definitely be something I would do. The rear sight is the Magpul M-Bus Pro. The reason that I do this is because sometimes I run a magnifier on this gun, and you need a smaller, lower profile red dot or rear sight if you want to be able to fit this on a standard length upper receiver and have it fit. Some mounts will work, some won't. So you're going to have to maybe trial and error, see if you could loan one from a buddy, or test one out at a gun shop to see if it will fit without having to bridge it. But this gives me the ability to still have a rear sight if I were to run a magnifier that's on a QD lever, which is nice. The upper receiver is a standard forged mil-spec upper receiver. One thing that PSA actually did, because this is a PSA upper receiver, complete upper, something that some places skimp on is the forward assist is actually pinned in place. Some of these are just like kind of some sort of adhesive in there, but this actually has a roll pin that goes through it, which they could have cheaped out, probably saved like 20 cents and done that. And I think on some of the PSA uppers, they do have that, which is nice. Not really something that I would choose to buy or not buy because of, but I don't know, I saw it and was like, oh, cool. So the optic that is on this is actually the original Aimpoint Pro that was on my first firearm. This one has seen plenty of use. It has the standard QD lever, which I really appreciate. I've since lost the front and rear covers, but it's a pretty standard, affordable optic that's in the higher end tier, I guess. You can sometimes get these for around 370 bucks. You can get them used for around 300, which is what I would recommend you do. These have a great battery life, very durable. This thing has been kicked around and beaten up, and it doesn't even look that bad. There's some wear on it, but there's nothing crazy going on with it. There's a little bit of wear on all the high points of it, but not bad. It works very well, great battery life, good durability, good company, good track record. The battery is a little funky, but if you're willing to buy a battery every couple years or every year for about $3, it works totally fine, and I really like it. Now, one thing that makes this more true clone correct to my original AR was this rail. It was actually kind of tough for me to figure out which rail this was because it was marked as a PSA rail at the time. What it is a polymer quad rail, two-piece drop-in that does not use a delta ring, but it uses a standard AR-15 barrel nut, which required me to cut off the delta ring because with PSA, they tend to torque the ever-living hell out of their barrel nuts. So I wasn't about to pop that barrel nut off. I had a Dremel and a cutting wheel. I just cut that right off, slapped this on there. It's polymer, it's lightweight, it does not have any heat shields in it, but I don't notice that it gets too hot to the hand, and I have gotten this thing screaming hot. I think it's because it's polymer, it doesn't absorb that heat as well. It tends to just dissipate the heat off instead of cooking your hands on the rails. Because it's polymer, it's a little bit smoother. You don't need to run rail covers if you have soft little, if you got soft hands, brother. The barrel on this is a standard phosphate coated 1 in 8 twist. If I were to recommend you get something like this. What I would say you get instead would be something that is either chrome lined or that is nitride coated. An uncoated barrel won't last as long, but you know, for this is just a beater gun. It doesn't need to be that accurate. This gun shoots at about, I don't know, 3.5 inches with cheap, crappy ammo, and I don't really shoot this very accurately because I have an astigmatism with a red dot, not exactly going for ultra precision. I mostly just shoot this gun fast, and this gun has held up just fine. With nicer ammo, I can get it about 3-inch groups, but the cheap PMC X-Tac that I've been shooting shoots just fine. On the upper, we have a pretty interesting light setup. This light setup is a Streamlight HLX. This HLX is a high candela, high lumen output light. Comes with a pressure pad that has a click button and just a standard pressure pad. You could also just run the clicky tail cap, which some people prefer to do. Now, it's mounted though on a Meteorite Concept swivel mount. And what this does is it adapts your older style of scout mount lights to have the nicer swivel system. So I have some of the Surefire newer generation scout lights that have the swivel, which is very nice. This takes your older lights that are still great lights and brings them into the modern era with a swivel mounting system. They make this for both Picatinny and M-LOK. This has been tightened down pretty hard, that's why it's hard to move. You can tighten it down even more so it'll never move, or have it looser so it's easier to adjust if you need it. The reason that I recommend this light is they're very affordable. You can get these on sale sometimes for around 100 or 120 bucks, and for the output that you get with them and the Streamlight brand name that is known and trusted, can't really go wrong with these, in my opinion, for the price. They are big, they are heavy, they are bulky. That's a downside. They also use a proprietary Streamlight system for the rear, but you can get adapters if you wanted to run the Surefire tail caps and switches, but it's not really a huge concern for me for this gun. This gun just needs to be able to hold a light, and this swivel mount was something that was sent to me that I thought was neat, so I wanted to show it on this because this is a very similar light setup to what I had on my original firearm, and I think that if I had it over time, this is an upgrade that I would have wanted to do because the storage setup that I had back then was very limited in the width category. So if this light was sticking straight off the side, I wouldn't have been able to put it in my little secret compartment in a bookshelf, which was pretty neat. Moving to the front, we have a Sparrow Dynamics single port brake. This brake does a pretty good job. I mean, you can see in that intro footage that it kicks out a lot of gas. It's got 2 little ports on each side at the top, and then just 1 big port at each side. It's a muzzle brake. They make 2 and 3 port versions of this as well. So if you wanted just the base rifle, this whole gun maybe cost 450 bucks. Now, all the little upgrades that I did to it, you know, maybe another 80 bucks for the charging handle, 40 bucks for the trigger, 50 bucks for the stock. The light is something that, for me, a light is non-negotiable on a defensive firearm. If it's just a range plinker, you don't got to really worry about that. But these lights are fairly affordable at around 120 bucks, on sale, maybe 100 bucks. The Aimpoint Pro. Now, in the current era, I am much more comfortable running a Hollow Sun on my defensive guns if needed. My main defensive AR has a Romeo 4XT Pro, which I think is a fantastic light, or fantastic optic. But at the time in 2013, the Hollow Suns weren't really around. You kind of had 2 options. You can go with the Bushnell TRS 25, which they were hit or miss. People nowadays seriously don't know how good we have it, and I'm, you know, preaching to the choir. I'm sure there's people significantly older than me out there that they think that I don't know how good we have it, or that I had it back then, right? The Bushnell TRS 25 at the time, they were not very good. They were fine, but they were not nearly as reliable as the Hollow Suns seem to be nowadays. And with it just being the Vortex options, I wasn't quite comfortable with them yet. They were newer, in my opinion, and less proven. But nowadays, there's a lot of great red dots that you can get for significantly cheaper, like 100, 120 bucks, that I run on most of my guns because most of my firearms are not defensive guns. But if I was going to have one AR that was simple, affordable, and could do what I needed it to do as a defensive firearm, something like this. You have a standard quad rail fixed front sight post with a rear iron sight. You have a good red dot. You have a flashlight. You're good to go. You don't need the ambi charging handle. The standard stocks work just fine. Whatever state-based compliance stuff that you need to do that or don't. I don't really care. It's up to you. Live your own life. But this flashlight is pretty good. The red dot is great. I saved up a long time to be able to afford this, and I'm glad I did because I still have it over a decade later. And it's now still putting in work, and it holds 0 on every gun that I've ever put it on. This gun does it all for the average person. If you think about the average gun owner, what might they want an AR for? Something to protect themselves and protect their family. Well, inside the home or within 100 yards, a red dot is perfectly capable of doing that. This flashlight has enough flood to light up a room, but enough candela to punch through and really blind someone if you need to, and push through photonic barriers. The quad rail is nice. It allows me to mount whatever I need to mount on it, whatever I want to mount on it. But realistically, it provides a comfortable surface for me to grab and is serviceable. Yes, this gun is not free-floated. It's not a sub-MOA gun. But when the base firearm itself costs less than $500, it's kind of hard to complain. Not everyone can afford really nice stuff. I think that more people can afford more than they might think they could, but, everyone's priorities are different, If you are legitimately going to train more with a gun like this versus a gun that costs twice it and then you won't be able to shoot it for a long period of time, I think this might be a better option. If the lower is in spec, it's fine. If the barrel is accurate enough and it's installed properly, it's kind of hard to go wrong. Now, I personally would not go any more budget than PSA. I've used BCAs in the past, terrible experiences. We've documented those. I've had a lot of bad experiences at my time in a gun shop, dealing with radical firearms stuff, so I don't really like them either. But PSA, for the most part, has done me well. It's my first gun. I probably put 5,000 or 6,000 rounds through it in the first 3 years that I owned it before I upgraded to a BCM upper on a spike slower, which, if I wasn't working in a gun store and I wasn't in this industry as a hobby the way that I am now, my AR would probably look just like this. And I think that more people should have something set up like this than a Daniel Defense, because most people probably can't afford that, but they might be able to afford this, and it might do them just fine. Now, if you can afford to spend more money, do it. If you can afford better tools, get them. But if you need a firearm, this is kind of my entry point into the market for AR-15s. And it kind of gives you an idea of what you could do and what you could get set up. Even in a restricted state like California, we have the ability to get firearms that are very capable. Yeah, this is not ideal, but it's workable. It's usable. Do I want this? No. Would it be better without it? Yes. But I can run this gun very well, in my opinion. I can always get better, and I'm always trying to get better. But I think that for a lot of people, we really nerd out about this maybe too much. And, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's wrong to say. Maybe we don't nerd about it too much. But for some people, they don't need to nerd out about it. So get something that works. Get something, put it through its paces, get good with it, learn how to use it, and just rely on what you know works. So if this is what you can afford, do this. If you can afford much more, do more. Anyways, I hope this was enjoyable to you. This gun really does kind of mean a lot to me because it kind of brings me back to my roots and kind of grounds me. I've done a lot of videos recently about some very expensive things like the Ranch Rifle series, and I'm thankful to be in the position where I get to test that stuff and let you know whether or not it's worth your hard-earned money. And people have been asking, do a budget build? Well, I've already been working on that anyway. So yes, there are some upgrades that increase the cost of this gun. Yes, the optic is a little bit overkill for people that are budget-minded, but I did it on a very limited budget by saving up over a long time. Now, your risk assessment and urgency may vary and differ, but if you can afford it and you can afford to wait, this is fine. This is good. I think this is a perfectly good AR-15. I've had zero problems with it. I've put about 2,000 rounds through this gun at this point, and I've gotten it smoking hot every single time that I've shot it. No problems yet. I don't foresee any problems in the future. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.